For the next few minutes, we're going to talk about 20 mile per hour zones. So those of you that live or work in or travel into London will know that in recent years, most of London, particularly central London, has been subjected to 20 mile per hour restrictions, 24/7. So even at 3 o'clock in the morning when there's nothing else on the road, you must drive at 20 miles per hour, which actually is quite a difficult thing to do. I would argue actually that it's actually quite dangerous in itself to try to keep below 20 mile per hour. But as a consequence of that, a study has now said that London is the world's slowest city for drivers because of those speed limits. So that's what an analysis is saying. And I wonder, is that something that we should be proud of, the fact that we are going backwards in terms of transport and travel? And this was an analysis, by the way, that was done of 387 cities in 55 countries. We are the worst because I think a slowdown has to be a bad thing. Well, let's see what Donnachadh Mccarthy thinks, who is the founder of Stop Killing Cyclists. Aren't you, Donnachadh?
Yeah, good afternoon, good morning, Russell. How are you? Have you got your cameras on?
Good to see you, good to see you. So that's a very strange name for an organisation. I mean, are there people out there shooting cyclists or pushing them off their bikes? Why Stop Killing Cyclists?
Yeah, we were founded 8 years ago when within a month in London, 6 people were killed on our roads cycling. Yeah. And so we set up a campaign to tackle that and to make our roads safer for pedestrians and for cyclists in London. Yeah.
So do we think it's only speed? Do we think that it's people driving at 40 or 50 miles an hour that are killing cyclists?
Well, what is very clear is that if you have cars driving at 30 miles per hour, the fatality rate is around 7 to 8 times greater. One of the greatest things you can do in urban areas and villages and towns is to reduce the speed, because actually that radically reduces the amount of fatal crashes. And you talked about central London. Sadiq Khan is actually responsible for the A roads in London.
He certainly is.
Only 16% of those have 20 mile per hour zones on them. The roads he's responsible for are 5% of all the roads in London. So we're talking about 0.5%. So the study that you mentioned does say that London is one of the most congested cities in the world, but it doesn't make any correlation between 20 mile per hour zones and that. The problem with London is more people are driving after COVID. And what we need to do is how do we encourage people to go from cars into public transport, cycling and walking? Because if we don't, our economy will seize up even further.
So if Donnachadh, if I go off to Wickes and buy, I don't know, a load of bags of sand, for instance, or I go, shopping for anything substantial, how do I lug that on my bike or the tube?
Well, I don't. How many times a year will you do that?
Weekly.
Oh, I'd love to see your back garden.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's
like a beach. I'm exaggerating for the sake of making a point, Donnachadh. You know I am. But it's very easy to say, just jump on public transport. I tried to do that yesterday on my way here to do Plank of the Week. Guess what? Jubilee line suspended. And they told us once we'd gone all the way down to the platform. So I had to go all the way back up again. And then actually I ended up in Brixton from where I was in Mayfair to get back here. So that's the state of our public transport. So whether it's public transport or being on bikes, I mean, and you realise in England, of course, our weather, and we particularly know this of late, it's not great for cyclists, is it?
Well, can you imagine if all 8 million of us in London decide to drive to Wickes each day, what's going to happen to London?
That's going to happen.
If journeys are unnecessary by car, need to be done by public transport. What we need to do, Russell, is that we need to reduce the cost of public transport. London has the highest public transport fares in the world. The Tories every year for 10 years increased the cost of trains into London, from outer London to central London.
Well, hang on a sec, but we've had a London mayor for nearly 9 years that's responsible for transport for London. Why hasn't he done that then? He's a Labour London mayor.
Yes, he did his best to freeze transport fares, and after COVID, the government didn't demand it as part of the COVID deal, because obviously the finances of TfL went belly up through COVID.
But hang on a sec, this gets us onto a whole different subject, which is you can't pay tube drivers £70,000 a year and give them double-digit increases in wages every year and expect somehow to reduce public transport costs. So you on the left are hilarious in that respect, because you want lower public transport costs, but you also want to pay the very people that drive those trains and tubes more and more money. Do you see the dichotomy, Donnachadh?
Well, what I see is that London has the only national capital in the world that the government doesn't fund the operational.
Well, it does. It gives TfL loads of money. It's bailed them out twice.
It gives it for capital.
Donnachadh. It's bailed them out twice because Sadiq Khan has bankrupted TfL not once but twice.
And either way, whatever the point about the politics of this, what we need to do is to reduce public transport costs in London from the highest in the world, to enable poorer people to use public transport at a reasonable cost. In Luxembourg, for example, all public transport is now free, and that would be good for our economy in London, because the key problem with London's economy is that our roads are clogged up with people who are taking cars and blocking up the economic trucks and vans that are needed for our economy.
So,
and the other thing about
Donnachadh, no one's going to disagree, I don't think, that we all want public transport to be better and cheaper. But of course, the question here is our roads. So those people that have to use our roads, so whether it be taxi drivers, Uber drivers, delivery drivers, commuters, etc., and particularly those that live in far-flung places that perhaps, where they're not that accessible by way of public transport. I mean, South London, for instance. I mean, and I say that only with a slight tongue-in-cheek, because the tube network in South London is pretty sparse and appalling. I mean, there are still lots and lots of people that need to use the roads, and the fact is, according to this study, that we now have the most congestion, the most roadworks, and basically the worst driving conditions of any city in the world. That's surely not something to be proud of, is it?
No, well, I mean, we're totally agreed. We both want to reduce congestion. We both want to improve public transport and reduce the cost of public transport, which is the single most effective thing we could do. But we're talking about the 20-mile-per-hour zones, which this Telegraph report unfairly linked 20 miles per hour zone. It's just, there is no link in the study to this. 20 mile per hour zones, if you look at the study that they had in the Telegraph, they said in London trips are 6 seconds longer per mile. But actually, if you read the small print, they're 10 seconds longer in the national network. So in some ways, London is doing slightly better than the national network. But the parts of London that have implemented 20 miles per hour zones by TfL, by the mayor, the statistics are amazing, Russell. 63% fall in pedestrians being hit, 25% fall in crashes. Now, I would say to you, or anybody listening, would you sacrifice 30 seconds on a 5-mile average journey in London and have a 63% fall in pedestrians being killed, injured, or maimed?
But Donnachadh, so you're suggesting that the answer is a congestion of cyclists in terms of a congestion of cars, because if we end up with no or fewer cars on London's roads, we end up with lots and lots more cyclists. I can't think of anything worse. I think the worst road users in Britain are cyclists. They're arrogant, they ignore road signals, they knock people over. So we're not trying to say that cyclists are the bastion of highway etiquette, are we?
No, nobody's saying that, but actually it's hilarious you talked about cyclists being dangerous and knocking people over.
I've seen you ride, Donnachadh.
3,000 people in London are killed or seriously injured, not by cyclists, but by drivers. And so therefore that's what we need to tackle on this issue. And actually talking about congestion, how many cyclists can a lane of traffic take?
Well, actually, from what I see, about 100, because they're menaces, they're maniacs.
In the Corporation of London, which is obviously not a left-wing bastion, but was part of the cycle network, the major superhighway. They did analysis. The cycle lane can take up to 10,000 people an hour. A road can only do 2,000. So talking about congestion, radically reducing congestion, radically speeding up transport for your 5-mile commute to work.
It all sounds, Donnachadh, it all sounds very backwards. I mean, it's taking us back to the 19th century, isn't it?
Backwards to have improved congestion, to reduce congestion, so our economy improves, to increase the amount of people we can carry per mile of roads is not backwards. It's actually the health impacts are hugely important.
Yeah. Although our London air is pretty
heart and lungs.
But Donnachadh, and I know this is also your other pet subject, London's air is incredibly clean now and has been getting cleaner and cleaner and cleaner for decades, of course. So I don't think we need any immediate reduction in cars to kind of get us any further there. But also, Donnachadh,
just get the economy running. You said there's congestion in London. If you want more cars in London, you get slower trips and you get more congestion, you get more pollution.
But Donnachadh, using your argument, I mean, what you're saying is that actually maybe we should go to 10-mile-an-hour speed limits, maybe 5 miles per hour, because on that basis there are fewer pedestrian issues and fewer cyclist issues. But that wouldn't be at all practical, would it? I think, look, Look, life is all about balance, and I think we are going backwards as a city. And let's be really honest, what the 20 mile an hour thing is really all about. It's not about air quality or safety. It's about money. It's about penalty charge notices, so that Sadiq Khan can do what he always loves doing, which is to charge us all more money to favour his pet projects. Isn't it, Donnachadh? Come on, be honest.
It's all about money.
It is all about money. Donnachadh, we've got to go. I've got to go to the news. Good to see you, my friend.